The bride they laughed at in the church until a lonely gunslinger claimed her before them all. Red Rock, Wyoming Territory, 1884. The bell tolled noon like a hammer on an anvil, slow and heavy, the sound hanging in the heat as if even time itself hesitated to step inside the whitewashed chapel where the town had gathered to watch a heart splinter. She stood beneath a cross of dull tin and smoke-stained rafters, a plain white dress falling in careful lines to her boots. The lace veil trembled with her breathing. Evelyn Shaw had washed the dress 3 times in creek water until her fingers wrinkled, stitched the frayed hem by lamplight, pricked herself so often she had to suck her thumb to keep from bleeding on the cloth. It still looked like a dress made by need, not by money. Her mother's ring, thin, humble, beloved, turned circles around her finger like it was searching for a reason to stay. Someone tittered in the back pew. Another passed a whisper up the rows as if it were a tin cup of cheap liquor. Unworthy, a woman breathed, not quite soft enough. Poor ranch girl, a man added, and the pew boards creaked with the bodies leaning in to watch, to judge, to devour. The smell of dust and pine pitch and old hymnals mixed with the sweet bite of church lilies wilting in mason jars, their heads bowing like they didn't care to see what came next. Evelyn's eyes found the groom. Aaron Pike stood in a black coat that still wore its tailor's crease, handsome in the way wealth polishes a face, smooth, confident, a jaw that had never been cold with hunger. His mother sat 2 rows back, a brooch the size of a $50 at her throat, lips pinched so tight they thinned to a knife's edge. He would not meet Evelyn's gaze. He scanned the ceiling, the preacher, the window where motes spun in the light like tiny ghosts, anywhere but her. Her father was gone 2 summers now, taken by a fever that stole breath and strength in the same hour. The small ranch had shrunk under bills and drought until it was more dust than grass, more fence than cattle. Aaron's offer had come like rain. He had visited the ranch, tipped his hat at the threshold, and said the right things in the right tone. A release from debt. A roof that didn't whistle with wind. A name that would smooth the world's edges. "You'll be cared for, Mrs. Pike," he'd said, already giving her a name that didn't belong to her. "And you'll want for nothing." A promise that tasted like mercy until she swallowed it and found the bitterness hidden inside. The preacher, a man whose hands were gold with butter from the Pike's table, cleared his throat. "We gathered to join." A snicker cut him off. The door hinges complained with a long, sorrowful moan as the church filled to the porch with sunlight. For a heartbeat no one moved. Dust flew up from the floorboards where boots had dragged, and in that floating amber haze a figure stood, head brim low, duster coat travel-stained, boots bleached white by trail salt. He was lean and tall the way a mesquite is tall, spare as anything that survives more drought than rain. No one knew his name, but the way silence tightened around him said the town knew his kind. The road had burnished his cheekbones and carved his mouth into a line a man gets from keeping too many words locked away. He smelled faintly of horse, of sagebrush, of gun oil that never leaves the skin no matter how many rivers a man crosses trying to wash it off. He didn't move to a pew. He didn't remove his hat. He stood with the sunlight at his back, a dark mark across the aisle. Evelyn felt a pull toward him she could not place, the way a needle cannot help but point north though it has never seen the sea. The preacher found his voice. "We gathered to join Aaron Pike and Evelyn Shaw." A woman laughed, high and bright like a glass breaking. "If he goes through with it." Evelyn's cheeks burned under the veil. Shame is not a color so much as a heat that eats the edges of the world until all you can see is your own heart, naked and awkward and judged. She forced her hands to still at her sides. The dress rustled like leaves in a dry wind. Aaron glanced at the door and then at his mother. She gave the smallest shake of her head, as if brushing away a fly. The preacher continued, too hearty now. "Marriage is a covenant. This church holds no God, only cowards." The stranger's voice drifted forward, low but clear, turned hard by distance, yet there was something in it that sounded like a memory carried too long. Every head pivoted. The stranger did not step inside. He didn't need to. His words had done the walking. Murmurs rose like gnats. The sheriff, a man with a soft belly and a tin star that gleamed only when the sun struck it just right, squared his shoulders and didn't stand. He scratched the edge of his badge with one nail and looked at the floor. Evelyn's gaze found the stranger again. Even through the blur of the veil she knew he was looking at her, not with pity, not with rescue, but as if she were a person, whole and entire, and the sight of it made something closed inside her lift its face toward air. The preacher sputtered, "Sir, this is a house of—" "She deserves better than your laughter." The stranger took one step forward. The pews creaked in chorus as the town leaned back without meaning to. He turned his head, and the afternoon light caught a faint line that crossed his jaw, a scar too old for fresh pain and too deep for forgetting. "A man who can't face his bride is a boy," he added, and the words fell like cold rain on a cook fire, hissing, shrinking the heat. Aaron Pike's lips parted. His gaze dropped to Evelyn's hand and the small ring there, so humble it might have been a wire twist from a fence. His nostrils flared, as if the scent of smoke clung to it. He took a long breath, like a coward preparing to call himself brave. Evelyn's heart thudded against bone. She remembered the last dawn with her father, the way he'd tipped his hat at her, the way he'd said, "You hold a line and the herd will drift toward you. Let go, and they scatter." She had held her line. She had tried to. She had stood here because the world had shown her a cliff and told her to jump or be pushed. Her palms were damp inside the lace gloves. She wanted a cool drink of creek water, the kind that bit her teeth, the kind that made her tongue remember it was alive. Aaron moved at last. He held out his hand. It trembled, so faintly only someone watching for it could see. Evelyn reached, because a life is sometimes the set of moves you make while the town counts. His fingers hovered above hers and then paused as if a wind had leaned against them. "Do you, Aaron, take," the preacher began, rushing for the finish line like a gambler seeing a near win. "Now, Aaron," his mother hissed, soft enough for the first pew, loud enough for Evelyn to hear the words slide like a knife between coats. "You do not have to." The stranger's eyes found Aaron over the veil of dust and hush. "Remember me. You'll wish you hadn't." A ripple went through the crowd. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was recognition, the bristle that rises when an old story walks into the room wearing a new coat. Someone whispered a name that didn't carry. Someone else said, "No," as if they were disagreeing with the past. Evelyn ran from the church steps with her veil still clinging to her hair, the thin lace fluttering like wings that had never learned to fly. Behind her, the voices rolled out the door in bursts of laughter and mock piety, their approval of cruelty louder than any sermon. A boy threw a flower at her back, and it struck her shoulder like a stone. The petals scattered across the dust, trampled before they could bloom. She kept running, past the mercantile where the window mannequins grinned with silk dresses she'd never wear, past the blacksmith's forge where the hammer paused mid-swing as if even iron held its breath, past the boys who whistled at her retreat and the women who sucked their teeth with pity sharp as glass. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get out of the light, out of the eyes that dissected her like butcher hands. Her lungs scraped raw. Her boots struck the boardwalk too loud, too desperate. Then the saloon door loomed like the mouth of something that swallowed shame for breakfast and spit it back out in whiskey. Inside, the air was darker, cooler, stained with smoke and old music. Men looked up from their cards and spit. One of them grinned. "Here comes the church bride," he said, not kindly. "Where's your groom, darlin'?" Changed his mind once he saw you close. A burst of laughter followed. Evelyn stumbled toward the far end, past tables sticky with spilled beer and cards curling at the corners. She slumped into a chair beside the piano, the keys long since out of tune. Her hands trembled in her lap. Someone whistled a wedding march off-key. The piano player didn't play, just smirked and sipped gin. Then the saloon door swung open. The man who stepped inside didn't look around. He didn't have to. The room noticed him like prey notices the shift in wind before the wolf appears. His boots hit the floor with a steady rhythm, dust still clinging to the leather. The duster coat swept behind him like it remembered every grave he'd passed. The brim of his had cast his eyes in shadow, but his mouth held that same unreadable line, neither cruel nor kind, only carved. He crossed to the bar without a word. The saloon keeper, a man named Tully with one eye and 3 gold teeth, raised an eyebrow. "What'll it be?" "Whiskey," the stranger said. His voice was low, like boots on gravel. "Don't cut it with water." The glass slid down the counter. He caught it, downed it in one swallow, and then let it rest against the wood. For a long moment, he didn't speak. The room leaned toward him without knowing why. Then he turned his head, slow and deliberate, and let his voice fall like an iron verdict. "I've killed men for less than what I just saw." The words cut the room in half. No one moved. A fly landed on a bottle and buzzed its protest. Evelyn lifted her head, startled, caught in the sound like a rabbit in the snare. Her eyes found him again, closer now, clearer. His face wasn't beautiful, but it was real, the kind that had bled and healed badly. There was a scar across his chin, the shape of a crescent moon twisted sideways. One of the card players stood. He wore a red neckerchief and a black hat curled at the edges, and he swaggered like someone who liked being watched. His name was Clay Rudder, a known drunk and a petty thief with a short temper and shorter memory for who owed what. He tipped his glass toward the stranger. That a threat, cowboy? The stranger didn't even glance at him. It's history. Clay's lip curled. Well, history's got a way of repeating round here, especially for folks who don't know their place. Tully cleared his throat, wiped the bar for no reason. Easy now, Clay. Evelyn shifted, drawing the stranger's attention for the first time. She expected pity. She expected the same softness people gave to crippled dogs and forgotten children. But he didn't look at her like that. He looked at her like she still had a spine worth standing on. From the back table, someone muttered, "Ain't you heard? She's the scarred one. Burned her arm when she was 6, fell in the fire. That's why no one'll take her. Too ugly under the lace." "Don't matter now," another said. "Her ranch won't last another season anyhow. Drought's already killed the back pasture." Clay turned to Evelyn, leaned one hand on the piano. "You know, Sugar, could have had a better chance with me. Might have given you a shack behind the stables." Evelyn stood, her hands curled into fists. Before she could speak, the stranger turned. "She don't need a shack," he said. "She needs every damn one of you to shut your filthy mouths." The saloon went silent. Clay's hand drifted toward the handle of his gun. "Don't," the stranger said. Clay hesitated. "You'll lose," he added, flat as winter. Clay dropped his hand, muttering curses, and slumped back to his chair. One by one, the others looked away. Evelyn left before anyone else could speak, before her tears betrayed her pride. She stepped out into the burning light, blinking at the sudden brightness. The street felt empty, though eyes still watched from behind curtains and windows. She walked back toward the edge of town, where her father's land began, what little remained of it. Behind her, the saloon doors creaked again. She didn't turn. The stranger followed slowly, not close, not with intent. Just a shadow behind her, steady, thoughtful, quiet. She reached the fence line. One of the rails was cracked again. Her boots kicked dust from the dry grass. Chickens wandered under the porch, and the house sat hunched like an old woman holding her breath. She stopped short, turned, and faced him. "You didn't have to do that." He nodded once. "I know. Why did you?" He looked at the ranch house. "Because a place like this shouldn't burn twice." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I heard Clay talking. About the back pasture. About next targets." Evelyn's blood turned cold. "What targets?" "The kind that don't scream loud when fire takes them." She felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her little brother, Tom, was still inside. He'd stayed home that day, belly sick with last night's bad milk. She turned and sprinted toward the house. By the time the sun dipped behind the canyon ridge, the first tendrils of smoke had already risen. She saw it from the front step, black columns rising like curses into the sky. Her scream broke the air, but the wind carried it away. The flames danced in the barn first, licking hay and beams, then jumped to the shed like it had been waiting. The stranger was beside her in seconds. He didn't speak, just moved. Buckets, shovels, shouted instructions. Tom was pulled out coughing, wide-eyed, clinging to his sister. She held him so tight her arms ached. But the fire ate faster than they could fight. By full dark, half the ranch was gone. The smell of ash drifted across the field, bitter and final. Tom sobbed into her chest. Evelyn didn't cry. She couldn't. Something inside her had burnt, too, and she didn't yet know if it would ever grow back. The stranger stood with his back to her, watching the last beam fall. Sparks lifted into the sky like ghosts. He turned to her. His eyes were quiet, unreadable. "They wanted you gone," he said. "Now you've got nothing left to lose." And in that hollow silence where only fire crackled, Evelyn sure realized something fierce. They'd taken her land, her name, her dignity. But she was still standing. And someone was standing beside her. The flames were already in the rafters when Evelyn screamed. The night had offered no warning, only the scent of kerosene too late to matter, the hush of wind too still, too knowing. She'd heard a window shatter, then the roar, then her little brother crying out from his bed in the back room. She ran through smoke-blind corridors, choking on air that felt like hot sand. The walls shimmered, dancing with orange snakes. She wrapped a wet shawl around her arm and plunged into the bedroom, scooping Tom into her arms. He clung to her, coughing, his tiny arms looped around her neck. The front door was blocked. The fire there snarled like a beast on its leash. She ran for the back, boots thudding across floorboards that cracked beneath her. A beam fell, crashing inches behind. Tom screamed. She didn't. Outside, the cold slapped her. Stars blinked overhead as if disturbed. The shed was already gone, a bonfire in the yard. Smoke painted the sky with streaks of ruin. She stumbled into the open, coughing, shaking, barefoot now. The fire had taken one boot. Tom buried his face into her shoulder. She sank to her knees, dizzy, the light of their life twisting upward in flame. And then, hooves. The ground trembled first, a rhythm that didn't belong to the fire. A black horse came tearing through the smoke, its mane lashing like a banner. The gunslinger was in the saddle, his coat flying behind him, silhouetted in flicker and flame. He didn't yell. He didn't ask. He simply leaned down, lifted Tom with one arm, then swung from the saddle and pulled Evelyn to her feet. She tried to speak, but he held her with a firmness that steadied more than her body. There's no time. He hoisted her onto the saddle behind Tom and swung up after. The horse reared and turned, hooves skidding across cinders. Evelyn clung to the boy, feeling heat press against her back as if the fire itself was trying to claw her down. They rode hard into the canyon, away from Red Rock, the only light behind them the glow of everything she'd ever known, burning like it had never mattered. By morning, they were deep into the Rimlands. A thicket of pines wrapped around a stone clearing, and the sun had barely begun bleeding into the hills when they stopped. Evelyn slid from the horse, her legs trembling, lungs aching. Tom curled under a blanket near the ashes of a dying fire. The gunslinger crouched nearby, silent, feeding kindling in small, careful motions, like a man who'd done it 1,000 times but still treated flame with reverence. Evelyn's voice cracked like dry wood. Why? He didn't look up. They did it to me once. I was younger. Had a wife. A child. A little farm near San Evaristo. I was away getting salt from the ridge. 3 days' ride. Came back to smoke, just like you. She stared. And the ones who did it. He nodded. Same men. Different names. Same eyes. She sat slowly. Her hands trembled. Her face was streaked with soot and tears and fury. The silence stretched between them until he broke it. They took everything from me once. His voice was low, almost reverent. I won't watch it happen twice. A hawk circled overhead. Evelyn wiped her face with a ragged sleeve and looked over at Tom, asleep, finally breathing easy. So what now? I go back to Red Rock and beg for shelter? Let them laugh again. No, he picked up a worn satchel, pulled out a revolver, and handed it to her. She stared. You'll learn. She took it, the metal cold and heavy in her palm. The days that followed were not soft. The clearing became their world. At dawn, he showed her how to load, how to check the chamber. At midday, he set bottles on stumps and told her where to stand. At dusk, she practiced with breath and patience, over and over, until the click of the hammer sounded like punctuation to her anger. He said little, but his silence was a kind that carried weight, not absence. Each time she missed, he'd lift her wrist gently and adjust the angle. Here, feel that. That's straight. You shoot like you're afraid of hurting the bullet, he said once, and she'd laughed for the first time since the fire. By the 4th day, she hit the bottle. By the 6th, she shattered 3 in a row. She grew steadier, stronger, her hands less like a girl's and more like someone who had been tempered. He watched her with an expression she couldn't name, something between approval and sorrow. One evening, after Tom had fallen asleep beside the fire and the coyotes howled from the hills, she dared to ask, what was her name? He didn't answer for a long time. The fire cracked. Lena, he said vinily. And my boy, Samuel. She nodded. The name settled into her chest like stones dropped in a well. She didn't ask more. Some griefs were too sacred to press. Later that night, she dreamed of her father, standing in the doorway of the old ranch house, the sky behind him alight with red. He was smiling like he used to, before the fever, before the world became something to survive. When she woke, dawn hadn't yet broken. The gunslinger was already saddling the horse. Something in his posture was different, rigid, alert. She stood, rubbing sleep from her eyes. What is it? He looked at her. His jaw was set. Riders. They crested the hill half an hour later, 7 of them, dust-choked and grinning like wolves. One carried a red scarf around his neck. Another had a shotgun slung over his shoulder like it was an ornament. The one in the center rode tall on a pale stallion, coat too clean for a man who earned it. They didn't come close. Just stopped at the rise and waited, letting the echo of their horses settle into the air. The gunslinger didn't move. Evelyn felt the cold steel into her stomach. The man on the white horse raised his voice. "We're looking for the bride." Her mouth went dry. "We heard she ran off with a stranger," he said. "That don't sit well with the men who paid for her land." The others laughed. "You tell her," he added. "We're taking her. She comes back now, it'll be quick. She waits, it won't." Evelyn stepped forward, the revolver tucked at her waist. The gunslinger gave no sign of surprise, only met her eyes. "Tell them yourself," she said. But the riders were already turning, dust curling behind them like smoke. "They'll be back," she said. He nodded once. "They always are." The wind moved through the broken bones of the old church like a whisper that had forgotten its words. The pews were ash now, charred ribs in a hollow body. The cross had fallen, its wood split and blackened, lying like a crucified tree. Glass glittered in the corners from the shattered windows, reflecting the low evening sun in red slashes. Evelyn stepped over the threshold slowly, the hem of her dress trailing soot. Her boots scraped the scorched floor as she crossed to the center of what had once been holy. She didn't speak at first. She didn't have to. He was already there, seated on the edge of what used to be the altar, sharpening a blade with slow, thoughtful strokes. His rifle leaned against the stone beside him. Smoke from his cigarette curled like regret into the dusk. She stopped in front of him, hands clenched at her sides, face flushed with anger and something far deeper, something heavy and buried. Her voice trembled, but it didn't break. "Why are you doing this for me?" He didn't look up. The rasp of steel against stone filled the pause. "Because no one else did." "That's not an answer." Her voice was sharper now. "I was humiliated in front of the whole town. My ranch is gone. My brother cries in his sleep. They called me unworthy, mocked me in God's house. And you, some stranger, stepped in like it was your fight. Why?" He met her eyes then. His face was still, but something in his gaze shifted, like a shadow turning over to show the scarred side. "I know what it means," he said, "to lose everything while everyone watches and no one stands." Evelyn's breath caught. The silence between them stretched like rawhide, tight, tense, holding a weight it couldn't keep much longer. He slid the blade back into its sheath and stood. The air between them thinned. She watched him carefully, like she might watch a rattler she wasn't sure was dead. "You want the truth?" he asked. She nodded. He stepped closer. "They used to call me the Black Vulture." Her brow furrowed. "I've heard that name." He nodded once, slow. "Fastest gun in the territories. 10 years ago, that name was worth more than gold and cost more than blood. Men ran from it. Women cursed it. Towns locked their doors when I rode through." She stared, something between fear and disbelief shifting in her chest. "That was you." "I was 17 when I killed my first men. 30 by the time I'd lost count. They came looking, always. I sent them away in pine boxes." She stepped back, the weight of his confession slamming into her like heat after thunder. "Then why hide?" she whispered. "Why walk away from all that?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because killing is a curse I swore to bury, until tonight." He looked away, toward the broken window where the sun bled orange across the distant hills. "I found a woman once. She was brave, loud, didn't care who I'd been. Thought I could change. We had a son. Tried to live quiet. Then they came. Evelyn didn't breathe. They weren't after me. They wanted the land. Same gang, same fire. She died screaming his name. I didn't get there in time." Her eyes stung. Her voice was soft now. "I'm sorry." He gave a small shake of the head. "Don't be. Just don't waste what you've got." She looked down at her hands, dirty from ash and grit and gunpowder. "I don't have anything left. You've got a boy who looks up to you. A shot that's getting straighter every day. And fire in your gut. That's more than most ever hold." They stood in silence as the sun sank lower, shadows lengthening across the ruined altar. Somewhere out in the brush, a hawk cried once, sharp, distant, alone. Then a boot scraped outside. Both turned. The sound was too slow to be threat. Too hesitant. From the doorway, a figure emerged, Aaron Pike. His coat was dusty, his face drawn, but his hair was still perfectly parted, as if he'd spent the last 3 days pretending he was still a man of dignity. He didn't speak at first. Just stood there, blinking at the two of them standing side by side in the church his name once hoped to consecrate. Evelyn stared at him, eyes hard. "What are you doing here?" Aaron stepped forward. "I came to help. I heard what happened. About the fire. About the gang. He swallowed. "I shouldn't have left you." The gunslinger's hand drifted near his revolver but didn't draw. His stance tightened. "You're not welcome here," Evelyn said coldly. Aaron lifted both palms. "I just want to make it right. My mother's men, they're gone. She's gone back east. There's no one left to impress. I came alone." The gunslinger stepped forward, voice flat. "And how'd you know where to find us?" Aaron hesitated. "A rider told me." Evelyn's stomach twisted. "What rider?" the gunslinger asked. I don't know his name. Said he saw you heading north. Said he owed me a favor." The stranger stepped close, eyes burning now. "You brought them?" "No. You brought them here." "I didn't know." Aaron shouted, panic rising. "They said they just wanted to talk. That it wasn't like before." Outside, the echo of hooves thundered across the rocks. The gunslinger looked to Evelyn. "Get your brother. Now." She ran, heart pounding, while Aaron shouted apologies that vanished into the roar of an approaching storm. The black vulture had buried the curse, but it had come digging.